You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest today is Mark Harris. And Mark and I have similar-ish backgrounds in that we've both worked in secure settings. And what we really want to talk about today is the importance of activity within those settings, because, you know, we tend to talk about activity and people can go for a walk or go to the gym, whereas actually if you haven't got that facility, then activity is still really, really important, but it brings up additional challenges. So Mark started out in fitness and personal training back in 2006, so a lot of experience, but then moved into the NHS, setting up and delivering fitness and wellbeing services within mental health hospitals. And then you moved into even more secure. So tell us a bit about that, Mark.
Yeah, so after being in mental health for 6.5 years, there was an opportunity coming up for a civilian physical education instructor in a high secure estate. Obviously, the skill set that I had from mental health, I thought, well, actually, I think I've got a lot of skills and experience that would lend itself to working in that environment. So I still remember the interview, actually. There was a lot of questions around mental health, which obviously for me was perfect. So, it's taking everything I'd learned in mental health and apply it in a high secure setting.
And it's something that it doesn't often get talked about, but actually, what was it that attracted you to that kind of working environment in the first place?
I think it was because I've been I've done 6.5 years in a couple of different mental health hospitals, and I had this, I used to see it a little bit as like a bit of a unique skill set of doing fitness in those kind of environments where you've got, individuals that potentially could be hard to reach, need a variety of interventions and rehabilitative work. So, I felt that actually challenging myself, and I kind of liked doing jobs that were a little bit interesting, a little bit quirky, and somewhere I could challenge myself rather than just a run-of-the-mill kind of general population gyms, if you like.
It's true, isn't it? 'Cause I know from when I was working in the psychiatric units, it's a very, very different clientele. You're not only dealing with mental health conditions, but you're also dealing with medication. But many of them have comorbidities, they have long-term conditions and all sorts going on. So it really does challenge your skills, and it's a great environment to work in. But it really does challenge you at times. There are times I used to come out of sessions and I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, what happened there? But overall, it's something I really, really enjoyed. So why is it important that people within secure settings of all kinds, whether it's a mental health unit or whether it's a high secure prison or even medium secure prisons, why is it so important that they have the opportunity to be active?
I think, if I just address sort of looking at mental health hospitals first, I think looking at patients that we had in terms of using exercise, it was part of a therapy program. So patients would obviously have their medication regime. So whether that would be things like the antipsychotics, antidepressants, whatever medication they were on. They would also have access to psychology and talking therapies. But exercise, obviously, with all the research that's out there now, exercise is a particularly effective treatment for people with mental health conditions. And for a lot of people with kind of mild, moderate depression, it's very effective in managing that. But when you're working in an acute setting, you've got acute mental health. So you've got people going through, quite intense psychotic episodes, hypomanic episodes. You've got patients who have potentially done very serious suicidal attempts. So you do have such a range. So to be able to use something like exercise for patients, it's quite a normalising sort of experience for them. So actually, do you want to come up to the gym? We're going out for a walk, whatever it may be. It's something that is normal, because when you're under section, for example, and you're stuck on a ward all day long, you need structure. So the physical activity program that I ran gave people structure. We had some morning activities, afternoon and evening. So there was that aspect of it as well. And obviously, medication side effects and the fact that you're in, with the kind of high energy food that you're given, because obviously it's quite cheap. So if you're eating lots of calories and not moving around, you're going to start gaining weight. So it was incredibly important, I think, why people in institutions need to do it. I think the activities of daily living are severely limited. So when you get up in the morning and you do all your washing yourself in the shower, making your beds, making breakfast, moving around, tidying up. When you're on a ward, you don't do a lot of that. So you do lose the activities of daily living where you can get all that extra exercise in there as well. So in terms of mental health, it's part of the treatment plan, it's part of structure, part of normalising activity. And moving on to the prison, it's a very similar story. I think it does give a lot of the prisoners structure. We had morning sessions with about 40 prisoners at a time doing that. So the importance of them to come and let off steam, de-stress, manage aggression. If you're within four walls, it's quite in on yourself. It's quite a tough experience for a lot of people. And then coming to the gym was a really good outlet for that. Within the prison, we offered the qualifications as well. So people had the opportunity to not only partake physically, but also partake in, achieving a qualification, which in turn would give them the opportunity to seek employment once they've been released. And what you've got to remember, people in prison at some point will be released. You punish people for their crimes, they break the law, but there will come a point for most of those prisoners that they will be released back into the community. So it's our job from the rehabilitation side of things to, empower them and give them something that they can use. And a career, as you well know, in sports and fitness is incredibly rewarding and easy to get into.
It is. And just jumping back to the mental health side of the hospitals and the units, what a lot of people used to say to me that they kind of knew it was part of their treatment, part of their therapy, but they didn't feel like it was therapy. They just felt it was normal. It was a normal activity. Yeah. So it's not just the structure and the schedule in the day, but it was a bit of time out for them where they don't think about anything other than the movements that they're doing. And for a lot of people, that is quite an important time out. Definitely.
And I think it's that normalising activity. And you've got access to a gym. I mean, in my opinion, I think it does happen. Every single mental health hospital, whether it's open wards, acute, PQs, low, medium, high secure, should all have gyms within them to give people access to that. But then equally, I think they should also have a sports hall, so they've got the opportunity to play sport. And the first hospital I worked in, we were very fortunate to have a sports hall where we could play badminton, we could play indoor football, we could run little circuit training sessions. Some patients would just come down and just run laps for about an hour because they've been stuck on the ward all day. It was just such a release. You put the music on, you get a group of people. It was so important from the social aspect as well.
And you don't realise, do you? For most of us, we don't realise how much even low-level activity we do just going about our everyday activities, just those activities of daily living, popping to the shops, cooking, general stuff. We don't realise how much energy we use doing that. And it's like when people say, "Oh God, I was ill with whatever, and I couldn't believe how bored I got and how frustrated because I couldn't move." So having that opportunity to burn off your energy is really, really important. You were saying about delivering those qualifications, and I know they're everything from level 1, which is much more of a personal approach to fitness and nutrition, moving into level 2, which is your more vocational qualifications. And I think for a lot of people, activity doesn't feel like formal learning because they're learning something they can do rather than something they may never apply. So what was important about offering those qualifications within the secure settings?
I think it was there's a lot of reasons why you offer them. Obviously, we know, as I said before, there will be prisoners, that will be released at some point. So we need it from that aspect of things. I think every prison will have a sentence plan. So obviously, whilst they're in prison, they'll need to show parole boards actually what they're doing, to improve themselves, to work on themselves and gain new skills. And I think a massive start for somebody to, improve themselves and better themselves is to work on themselves. So the level 1 qualifications, as you say, were really good to give people some basic knowledge around how your body works, some healthy living advice, looking at exercise, which was great. And then from that aspect of the course, it was easy for us to identify prisoners who could then progress onto the level 2 gym instructor course, which would give them an industry-based qualification they could seek employment with after release. And give them a qualification they can take anywhere. We also did a bolt-on in level 2 circuit training and a level 3 award in nutrition too. So for some prisoners, it was important. I mean, I worked with one particular prisoner who was in the segregation. So we did a distance learning nutrition award. So I'd, go to the door, have a chat with them about, the course, make sure they understood the materials, And then I would come back periodically, whether it was kind of once, twice a week, just to kind of, maintain that. And it was such a reward actually to see this prisoner in segregation. I sort of slipped the active IQ certificate through the door, if you like. And her face when obviously that she'd achieved something was actually, for me, it was quite rewarding as well. And obviously for her to have achieved something whilst being in the segregation unit of a high secure prison was a good achievement.
It is, other rewarding organisations are available.
There are indeed. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. But again, it's when it's something to do with, learning how the body works, but physical activity and stuff, I think it really does help people see where they can progress. It's not like here's all about your body, job done, let's go. They're learning something that they can actually put into practice for themselves. But as you say, then you can identify the people that would go on and have potential to be gym instructors. So there is opportunity for work. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Goodness me, challenges. I think working in mental health, I think the biggest challenges majority of the time were presentations of patients. So obviously when someone is, going through a psychotic episode, there is a real potential for some people to obviously become violent. So if you're delivering ward-based activities, whether it's yoga, whether it's kind of table tennis, football, whatever it may be, you're working in an environment where things could be quite unpredictable and anything could happen at any time. So whilst you're there delivering the activity, doing everything that you've trained to do, you've also got to have eyes in the back of your head, be aware of where you're standing, be aware of who's in the room, who's come into the room, who's left the room, and just kind of keeping your wits about you, I think, because anything could change in that environment very, very quickly. You've got patients who are quite hypermanic, so they're very high energy. And as much as I tried with a lot of patients who were hypermanic to try and burn off that energy, it was relentless. When they're going through that episode, it's whatever exercise you throw at them, they keep coming back for more anyway. So that was obviously a challenge. For me as a male member of staff as well, we did have patients who maybe presented as sexually disinhibited through their mental health. So I then had to ensure I had a chaperone present, obviously for safeguarding, to make sure they were in a safe position, but equally safeguarding myself at the same time. And I'd always be quite honest about why there was another person in the room. And most of the time, patients would be happy with that. Some didn't like it, but for me, okay, I'll do a ward-based intervention with you because that's going to be safer. Group work is always tough when you've got lots of different characters. And as you know, you do meet a lot of characters working with mental health. So you've got lots of strong personalities within groups. Throw in obviously acute mental health and some presentations that may prove quite challenging at times. But it's group management, and I found the challenges quite good in terms of my own development as well. And then as we said at the beginning, comorbidities as well is another one. So a lot of people with kind of long-standing mental health would often have things like type 2 diabetes, potentially asthma. I also had a lot of other conditions as well. I worked with a patient who had muscular dystrophy, MS. A patient came in who had a pacemaker. So obviously I was very careful when you're working with these patients, working with the medical team as well to make sure they're okay to do it. So you do get exposed to a lot of physical health conditions alongside it that actually are the challenge, because the mental health is being assessed, the mental health is being treated, the mental health, having meetings about that, whereas the physical health sometimes would get overlooked. I know that's improved massively since I first started with all the physical health nurses, and things have changed there, but you've got to kind of look at both sides of it as well.
Absolutely. And there's that you add in things like medication challenges, because the timing of medication can really impact how people participate. It can knock them out to the point where they turn up, sit down, fall asleep and then leave. I had a couple of those, and I'd sort of say, is it, and they say the important thing is they're turning up. It's that structure and everything.
You normally get people falling asleep in yoga classes. ECT was another one. I had a few patients who would have ECT and they'd be wiped out for a couple of days. And as the environment can change suddenly, so can someone's sort of presentation. And if they've started new medication and it's quite a high dosage, when you've got that sedative effect, people aren't really in the mood to do anything kind of really physical or do anything exercise-wise. So that's where we do the health promotion groups to kind of look at, ways that you can, sneak a bit of physical activity into your day, where you can improve, what you're eating, how a food affects your mood. We did a bit of stress and wellbeing work as well. So there were other opportunities that we gave people, because when you are on quite high doses of medication that leaves you quite sedated, you're not going to want to run around in a gym. That's something they're not going to want to do. So doing something else that's still linked to improving their levels of physical activity is vitally important as well.
That's it. And it's, you have to remember that when you're in a secure setting, whether it's a hospital or a prison, as I said earlier, you can't just nip out for a walk. You can't just walk around the block or do some yoga on the ward because other people might not like it. You do, I found, particularly with the group work, you get very good at diffusing tactics. You get very good at changing the emphasis of the class. Everybody, let's relax now.
Yeah, it's dynamic risk assessing. You need to get to know the patients. You need to get to know who's in there, and even, as you say, going out for a walk. So we linked in with a national walk-in scheme, and as part of that, we take patients out a couple of times a week. But if you're under section, so if you're on a 6-month section, I then need to go to the consultant and say, has this person got another section, which is a Section 17 leave form that will allow them to come out with me? They have got Section 17 leave for an hour a day, but their husband came to visit them, so they've gone out with him, so they've used that leave for the day. They haven't got any more left. So you had to make sure if you're taking somebody out who's under section, they had the leave to go out. You had to risk assess them because you didn't want them to abscond, because then you'll do a missing persons report. You did have people who were informal, so they were voluntary admissions who could come and go as they please. So now you've got a dynamic of people that cannot leave the ward on their own free will, and you've got some people who can leave the ward on their own free will. So it's dealing and having those difficult conversations. A new patient's come in, wants to come for a walk. I'd love to take you for a walk, but you're new in. You need to risk assess you, and I'll be back in touch. We can take it from there. So it's hard to say that to somebody, but then we had the gym upstairs. We did have an offering in the hospital until that patient was at a point in their recovery where they were able to come out with us. And it was great to take groups of patients out on walks. It really was.
But this is where it's so important, isn't it, to have the in-house, in-place facilities, even if, like you say, it's just a room where they can walk around or just do some activity of some kind. It needs to be not just 10 o'clock in the morning. It needs to be spaced out through the day so that people can take advantage of it when they're at their peak, if you like, of alertness or appropriateness. What were some of the challenges within the more secure prison settings?
Oh, that was quite. That was slightly different. Slightly different. I think within the prison, obviously you have a regime. Yeah. So obviously the regime will start at a certain time every morning, and it would finish at a certain time every day. So obviously what you did was in that regime. Challenges that we would often find is obviously there would be the threat of violence is always there, whether that's potentially towards staff, whether it's prisoner on prisoner. In the gym, we saw a bit. We were quite fortunate because we did activities and we offered things to prisoners that they actually wanted to do and enjoyed. Yeah. So in terms of that, we were fairly on good terms with most people. I think the other challenges you've got is being aware of different gangs, disagreements, the opportunity to pass and trade drugs. So again, like the mental health unit, you've got to be very observant, have eyes in the back of your head. There's other issues we had with foreign national prisoners whose English was quite poor. So trying to communicate with them what we need them to do, even filling out a PAR-Q. So we potentially would find another prisoner who would be able to translate for us as well, and little things like that. So just small difficulties, because we needed to get a PAR-Q. We needed to know, if there was any health conditions we need to be aware of. The other issue we had was with staffing. So in the wider prison, if they're short-staffed, the operational officer would come up to me, right, Mark, I need some officers to go onto the wings now, so I need to prioritise the operational requirements of the prison. So I would lose an officer or two. So we'd either have to close or we'd have to run a reduced service. So that was always a challenge. When there's escorts going out and you've got to have, the right amount of safe staffing on wings, it does take priority. I think as well, another challenge that we did have some long sentence prisoners within our estate. So what you've got to think about is a bit of variety that you're offering as well. If you've got someone who's on a double figure sentence with you, you've got to, if you're doing the same activities every single day, it's quite mundane, it's quite boring, you'll lose the engagement, and that's when things potentially could go a little bit south. So they were always kind of the main challenges. I think the way prison is, high energy food that's cheap was always a tough one. I think having a lot of time sat around in cells as well. You want to kind of get people exercising for their health. you don't want them to drain the healthcare within prison, because it was a fairly good provision there. But again, you don't want people using it oversubscribed, a bit like the NHS outside of things as well. You know, you need to make sure that on release, we're bringing healthy people into society as well, not people who are going to, you know, kind of take up NHS resources, and getting them to have that responsibility as well. I think they were sort of the main challenges, really. Facility-wise, we had all the facilities that we needed to run the programs that we wanted. It was just, you never know what could happen. And one particular prisoner I worked with was doing very well in the gym, really into the physical nature of what we were doing, moved on to the education courses, had progressed onto a level 2 gym instructor, really good in lessons, worked really well. And then there was an incident between kind of two kind of gangs, if you like, that ended up in violence. So unfortunately, she had to be sort of, you know, removed from the gym and taken off the course. And, you know, if you're breaking sort of laws within prison, then obviously you're going to be punished again. So it was a real shame. And I remember walking her back to the wing, and the frustration that she had, because she knew she had done something silly and messed up a really good opportunity, which is frustrating, because you know, when you're working with people, you want them to do well. So that was a challenge as well. At times, you know, getting people to, you know, to focus on what they need to do to improve themselves and progress with a sentence plan towards release.
Do you find that having the educational element, working towards a qualification, whether it's about their own personal health and fitness or whether it was a wider, broader gym qualification, did that help keep people engaged?
Yes, because I think the courses had an element of, I wouldn't say prestige, that kind of, but it was something that a lot of prisoners did aspire to want to do. You know, they're in the gym with us every day, exercising, engaging with all, you know, the classes we put on, the little challenges we would do, things like that. So we would get a lot of really good engagement, and the fact that they enjoyed that environment, and then we can actually do a course in this as well. It was quite good. A lot of prisoners would badger me, you know, when's the next course starting? Can I get on it? You know, and you'd used to say, right, have you done your maths and English? Is it the right standard to get onto the course? Every prisoner will be screened with maths and English when they come in. So once we know they've got that level, then obviously it'll be appropriate for the course. But having those qualifications certainly kept the prisoners really engaged in being in the gym, down with us and working towards us. And we also had job roles within there. So obviously within the prison, right, you work, you know, you earn a small amount of money, but it's like a mini society. You know, you get up in the morning, you go to work, it gives you structure. So we had some gym assistant jobs who we would have prisoners kind of assist us with, you know, doing some form filling, running some gym inductions, doing that kind of stuff. So the opportunity for them to work in the gym and spend the whole week in the gym was obviously another really kind of motivation for a lot of prisoners as well. And we did have a lot of gym assistants actually who did a really good job. And, you know, I potentially would have, you know, if I was running a gym, potentially have employed a couple of them.
And that's another important thing, isn't it? They're not just coming out with a qualification, they're coming out with a little bit of evidence of work experience at whatever level. It's sort of, well, I've done this. So I haven't just got this piece of paper. I've got some experience to show for it as well. And that really helps to add a kind of value to what they're doing.
Certificates were, oh my goodness me, we would do gym challenges. So if you did our little gym triathlon, you get a certificate. If you did a certain amount, and every prisoner loves it. I was constantly printing out certificates for them, because what would happen during the sentence plan is obviously they'd work on this, go to the parole, and obviously show that, look, I've got these certificates, what I've been doing in the gym. You know, I've come off drugs, I've been working hard, and you know, you can have the option to, you know, rehabilitate people using physical activity. As I said all the way through, you know, prisoners go to prison, they get punished, they lose their liberties, they lose their freedom, but equally they will be released at some point. So you have to instill a bit of positivity and using physical activity to do that. So when they get released, you know, they can keep themselves fit, maybe seek employment. But even if they're physically well, it's going to help their mental health, and it's going to contribute to bringing in contributing members of society again.
And that, again, the mental health of people in prison is so important, and it's often so under-resourced. So having that opportunity to be active, and we know the impact it has on mental health. We know that it's a positive thing to do. I mean, let's face it, any of us know that if we are in a real funk, we can go out for a walk and you feel better. Yeah. So for people who haven't got the opportunity to choose what they do from a wider opportunity of activity, having something that they can do is so important for their mental health, something to look forward to, something to be...
And that's why we did the exercise referral programs within the prison. So we worked with the healthcare teams, we worked with the safer custody teams to identify prisoners who we could use exercise as part of a treatment plan, whether it's things like severe self-harming. A lot of prisoners did have their own traumas as well. Some of them did have, horrible things happen to them and they've gone on to commit crime, for example. But we had the exercise referral for mental health. We also had the physical exercise referral. So again, working with prisoners who, had severe mobility issues, various conditions that needed to be managed using exercise. We also did a pre and postnatal course as well. So we had, women in prison, obviously, who were pregnant. So obviously using exercise to keep them as healthy as possible. And then moving on to the mother and baby unit if they were successful once they've had babies. So we'd go across to the mother and baby unit and work with some postnatal exercise with them as well. So there was a lot of ways you can engage different people in.
Yeah, and it's so important. We go on and on and on and on and on about the importance of activity for health, and it needs to be, everybody needs to have that opportunity to be active for their health. Did you notice big changes in people's health, particularly on the referral work that you did? Did you find that you really did see improvements?
Yeah, I think with the mental health side of things, we can measure that because people who, self-harm, there'd be, we had safer custody, which was a team that would kind of manage our kind of at-risk prisoners, and they would be able to track, self-harm incidences, whether they were going up or down. So we'd look at the prisoners who were having our intervention, did the self-harm come down? And in some cases it did, confidence improved. Now we can start working with that individual once we get them into that place. And to use exercise is really important. And I think with the exercise referral for the physical, a lot of the prisoners were very grateful that they had the opportunity to use exercise as part of a treatment to manage their conditions whilst they were, in prison. So there were definitely some positive outcomes, I think.
That's really good to hear because, again, it's just because somebody is in a secure setting doesn't mean that their physical health should be neglected or not looked after. And in fact, it's even more so because they've got limited access to opportunities to be active. And it's just so important that people know what sort of things they can do just to keep themselves healthier. And it presumably helps promote a healthier lifestyle when they are released, when they do go back into society. They've got a better understanding of how to look after themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's what we always had in mind, I think, when we do it. And we would do we would do sports as well. There'd be kind of football in there, there'd be volleyball, was quite popular. So it's having a range of opportunities to engage people in something. If you've got someone in prison who sits in their cell all day and doesn't say a word, you don't know what they're thinking, what's going on in their mind. But exercise, you can build a bit of a therapeutic relationship in some sense, and transfers to mental health. When you're working with patients, you can build a rapport with people quite easily and have a little chat with them, get to know them a little bit, and you can feed that back as part of the MDT approach as well. So it's all working together.
And that's a really important thing, isn't it? That social element, that socialization, working together is such an important part. So team sports, any sports that they're doing together, like you're saying, if they're doing a little mini gym triathlon and things like that, it's something, we're in it together. And I think it hopefully, it helps people to become better at relationships. I mean, I know there will always be issues. There are in the real world. There will always be issues, but hopefully, activity is something that's a bit of a leveler. It's kind of like we're in it together. We're on the same team, and it just brings in a little bit more. It's a distraction as well, isn't it? It's a little bit of a focus and a distraction.
Yeah, and when you're in prison, it's all about, trying to waste time.
Yeah.
Trying to occupy your time, and physical activity can do that.
So if we've got any instructors here listening who are thinking, gosh, that sounds like a different career move, what would your advice be to somebody who was thinking, actually, I'd quite like to get into mental health settings or more secure settings? What would your advice be to them?
I think mental health settings. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in mental health. I think it was great because you had lots of different people coming in all the time. You had a real variety of clients, if you like. I think people who want to get into secure settings, my advice would be have some fitness experience under your belt, when I moved into mental health, I'd had some experience, obviously, in personal training. I was an assistant manager of a sports centre, so I had the managerial side and that under my belt. So when I went in to start up a service from scratch, I was quite well drilled in organising, setting the facility up, things like that. So I'd always say have some experience under your belt. Do an exercise referral qualification as well, because that will broaden your scope of practice.
Yeah.
Working with, obviously, especially in mental health, the comorbidities and the physical health side of things as well. So that's my advice in terms of quals. I think in terms of the sort of person you are, I think if you're interested in people, enjoy working with people. I think if you're someone who can be very adaptable, thinking quick on your feet, and if you want something just a little bit different, doing something unique and being able to work with people in society who may not have an easy access to an opportunity that allows them to exercise or to partake in anything kind of structured. You can really do a lot of rewarding work, I think, and especially in mental health, I found it incredibly rewarding. The prison was on a bigger scale, and there were certainly some success stories with that too. But if anyone's thinking about it, it's, if you're that sort of person who is very self-motivated, you enjoy communicating, then it's definitely something to get your teeth into, and it certainly, enhances and gets attention with your CV as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing is, you've now moved into much more formal teaching.
Yeah, so
it's led into a career development for you. People may go either way, so they may go from more formal teaching and fitness into more secure settings, or they may go from secure settings into something a little bit different. So, you're now working as a lecturer, as a tutor, which as kind of when you discovered a love of teaching, which is
it was in the prison. That's where I learned to teach formal qualifications. So even as somebody, that was one of the things that attracted me to the role, was I had an influence in being able to teach on the industry-based qualifications, and doing that gave me a real kind of inspired me. I think I really enjoyed doing this. I'd love to do this full time. And then for me, the natural progression, after being in fitness sort of, 16, 17 years, it was then moving into teaching and using all that experience to teach on the courses, to teach on the personal training course, to teach protective services and work in sport as well. So yeah, it kind of led me down that way. Whereas a lot of people might go down, a freelance, self-employed kind of fitness route, managerial routes. There are different routes that you can take, and I've just sort of taken the teaching route.
And it's really good that people like you are going down the teaching route, because it's something we need, that experience, we need that knowledge to share with the people that we're teaching to coming into the industry. And it is so important to have that wide range of experience, not just, I've worked with fit people, getting them fitter. It's working with a diverse range of clients, because let's be honest, we in the industry, whether it's fitness, physical activity, whatever, we want more people more active more often. And that means that diversity is so important, because you can't be sitting there in a gym and saying, oh, crikey, I've only ever worked with fit people. I don't know how to work with someone who's not.
Yeah, I find that very, if someone has that mindset, I find it, my mindset in the mental health unit was, I'll work with anyone.
Yeah.
So even if there's someone who's being very loud, very abusive, I want to work with you. I want to get you in my gym. And when I got those hard to reach patients, if you like, who were quite tough to engage, but I had them in the gym, even if we've just got the music on they like and we're doing a bit of band work, or we're doing some med ball slams or thrashing the battling rope around. It was, for me, I want to work with as many different people as I can. And if I'm honest, the experience that it's given me, I don't think there's a type of client with a medical issue that I haven't really worked with. I think I've been exposed to pretty much everything. And to have that wide scope when you are teaching, I can say, right, I can use case studies and they're things that people that I've actually worked with, they're things that I've done with these people. So
it's real life.
It's quite good. Yeah, it's preparing that. You're not going to work with athletes and footballers. You might be lucky and get a little bit of that, but the majority of your work as a fitness professional is with everybody else.
And again, it's something that you can make such a huge difference in somebody's life just by a small amount of activity and a bit of confidence. I had a guy, 6 months he was coming to the classes in the unit, 6 months. And one day, as he was leaving, after no engagement, he would come along, he would just stare into space, he would do most of it. And one day he said, that was good, and left. And it was like, I mean, I didn't like, ooh, but inside I was thinking, oh, yes, suddenly he's got it. And it was that changed him, because suddenly he engaged. And it wasn't like the next week he came in cracking jokes, but it's so important to recognise that you might not realise, as the instructor, as the PT or whatever, you might not realise the significance you're having in somebody's life just by supporting them in becoming more active. It can make a massive difference to somebody's life. So,
and in mental health and in prisons, you're working with people at the lowest ebb. You know, when they've been put under section for a serious suicide attempt, they're at the lowest point. They can't get any lower now. And to be able to be part of a team, you know, with nurses, the doctors, the therapists, to have a bit of input into that person, to get them back on their feet and use exercise as something that's going to be positive for them, it is incredibly rewarding.
And having them,
I think that's the biggest part of the job, is the rewards.
Yeah, having them walk out of the session thinking, I did that. I couldn't believe it. I don't believe it. I did it. And this is where your careful planning comes in, doesn't it? Because you make sure that you start where they are. But for somebody to walk away thinking, I did it, is just such a confidence boost for them as well. It is. And it's so important. Mark, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us today. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's taken me back to some of my memories. I won't share most of some of the things that happened, but, you know, it's just expect the unexpected, I think, would be my advice, is always be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, be adaptable, be very adaptable.
Yeah, but and it is a great field to work in. It really is, because it is so rewarding. Yeah, but thank you so much for coming along.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All the best with lecturing.
Thank you.
And guys, thank you all for listening. You're listening to me, Sarah Bolitho, Creating Active Lives, with my guest this week, Mark Harris. Thank you, and I will see you on another episode very, very soon. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.